In a recent video, Coffee Stain Studios asked us players to give ideas for DLC for Satisfactory.
Kindly ask you all to leave some comments maybe here as to what type of content you would like to see in the DLC and what kind of content you would pay for Satisfactory.
In this video, I'm going to go through some of the top voted and most common ideas from the YouTube comments and from Reddit and determine whether they get a checkmark or if they're just nuclear waste. Now, I am going to skip a lot of great small ideas. I think a full DLC needs to be reasonably large or different than the base game. So if something is missing from this list, I may have just thought it was too small. For example, I saw a lot of suggestions for small train and road improvements, but that doesn't sound like a whole DLC, even though I would love to see those things. So with that said, let's jump into the suggestions. A new map. Far and away, the most requested DLC is a new map, which shouldn't be surprising because people have been requesting this for years. And I'm going to come out and rate this one at nuclear waste right away. Having followed Satisfactory since the beginning, it's clear that our current map has been a long and difficult journey. So difficult that the map's designer, Hannah, has said on many occasions that if there was ever another map, she would not be the one to make it. Clearly, it's a process.
Are we ever going to get a new map DLC? I don't know. That could be cool, but currently no plans for that.
It has taken this long to make one map. Yeah, like the idea of there being like another map is something that of course we've thought about and played around with that idea. But like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Chief.
The map was getting tweaks and sometimes major adjustments throughout all of development and was a slow process, and understandably so. Not only does the terrain itself need to be interesting, cool, and varied, but it also has to be balanced in terms of resource nodes, collectibles, hostile creatures, and other hazards. There need to be natural roads, creative hiding spots for items, and a layer of polish that is not easy to achieve in a short amount of time. I don't think a new map could be created in the time frame that Coffee Stain wants to release the DLC in, even with the lessons learned from the first time. And even if it was made, I honestly don't think it would be as good as the current map. It would be cool because it's different, but the current map is the result of years of gradual improvements, and it will be difficult to match the quality. I think the most realistic version of this suggestion would be a smaller map or an additional biome. I would love to see a snow biome, as I think that's something that is notably missing from the map. I also saw suggestions for this small map or extra biome being a moon or an asteroid, so we have space gameplay. Another suggestion is a series of small islands, which is more manageable and could add a new water travel element to the game. Waterworks. And that brings me to the next DLC idea, which is water or ocean updates. There are a few different angles that players presented for this idea. The first ties into the islands thing and would involve boats that transport resources back to the mainland. It could be set up so that you need to research and build boats in order to reach these islands, and maybe even the area in between could be off limits for building, so that you have to use boats instead of just running a massive belt. Another idea is to go full Subnautica and have the ability to dive underwater, build underwater equipment and vehicles, explore caves and harvest unique resources, and even fight aquatic creatures. Players suggested offshore buildings and underwater structures as well. I think utilizing water in any of these ways would be great and would add a distinctly different element to the game while keeping the core gameplay familiar enough. So this DLC suggestion gets a checkmark from me. Endgame Challenges. Getting to the end of Satisfactory is certainly a challenge on its own, but once you get there, plenty of players find that they need some additional motivation to keep playing. Therefore, one DLC suggestion is some sort of ongoing tasks and challenges to keep players engaged. A popular suggestion is to receive orders for advanced parts that demand a target parts per minute rate into the space elevator. No other goal in the game is based on parts per minute, so this is an interesting suggestion that would also bring a new type of challenge to the game. But it doesn't necessarily have to be parts per minute. Any sort of roguelike or endless mode that asks the Pioneer to fulfill orders would be great. This DLC does get a checkmark from me, but it's not top tier, since I think that Coffee Stain would prefer to make a DLC that's accessible no later than the mid-game to maximize how many players could interact with it. Expanded Story. 1.0 got a massive story update that helped answer many of the questions we as players had, and gave us plenty of new ones. However, some players found the end of the game to be a bit lackluster, and found themselves wanting more answers. So some have suggested that the DLC can be an expanded story or a continuation of the story. In a way, I do like this idea, but I think I'm actually happy with the level of story that we got. It's okay to be ambiguous. I feel like a lot of people these days want every single thing explained, And a lot of properties do this and then ruin the mystery of the original story. The Star Wars prequels robbed the Force of some of its mysticism by trying to explain midichlorians.
Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells.
Prometheus answered some of the questions raised in Alien that make that movie a little less interesting now. I think the Star Wars prequels and Prometheus are both pretty good movies, but I also see a lot of value in the sense of mystery and ambiguity that stories can leave you with. Not every question needs an answer, and it can be more fun to come up with your own theories. Even from the beginning in Satisfactory, it's obvious that you, as the pioneer, are not the main character. You're simply a witness to Ada's story, and we don't have to be privy to where her story takes her. And frankly, knowing what happens after the ending of the game is probably way above our pay grade at Fix-It, if we're being honest.
You have been promoted to local production manager, effective immediately.
If handled well, a story DLC could be great, but I am going to hesitantly call this idea nuclear waste. Farming. Farming has been a popular request for a long time, so it's not surprising that it's a popular DLC suggestion, especially considering the crossover between Satisfactory and farming sim type games. In the past, I personally would have been less interested in this idea, but with 1.0 including biomass burners with belt inputs, I'm a lot more in favor of this idea these days. I think farming in any form would be great as a mid-game or later mechanic, that way it wouldn't make early game biomass burners overpowered. Farming could be used to automate the production and harvesting of biomass at a bare minimum, but it could also extend to mycelia, which can be a pain to harvest manually, and it could allow us to automate inhalers and other health items. Farming creatures would also be interesting, but I would consider that to be less likely, since they are hostile and animal remains can go towards the awesome sink, so they might think that's too overpowered to be able to farm creatures. Overall, I think it's clear that some level of farming could fit into Satisfactory very nicely, and automated biomass burners feel like they were a baby step in the direction of making a DLC like this possible. Also remember that rain was briefly in the game, so it's even possible that weather could be involved and affect how efficiently your farms produce, if that gets added back in. So this idea gets a checkmark from me. Additional cosmetics. People love to build gorgeous structures in Satisfactory, and there are a lot of cosmetic items available already, but a lot of players want more. This goes from the very practical curved foundations to the very advanced screens that show production rates across your world. Somewhere in the middle, there are things like placeable plants, tables and chairs, posters, and overall more variety in terms of wall and foundation skins. I know this is a slippery slope to having an overwhelming amount of cosmetics, as there are already a lot, but many players do want this, and it's not disruptive to the core gameplay, so this gets an easy checkmark. Golf. You already know golf gets the Fix-It checkmark, golf DLC or we riot. Alright, those are all of the ideas I wanted to talk about, and pretty much all of the ideas that I saw repeated by a lot of Satisfactory players in the community. If I didn't cover your DLC idea here, let me know in the comments. I know Snoot and some of the other Satisfactory team members occasionally stop by the channel, so maybe they'll see your fantastic idea. If you liked this video, let me know with a like and a subscribe. We're just about to hit 20,000 subscribers, which is incredible.